Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Helen King, and it's a real honour for me to be Principal of St Anne's College, and an absolute privilege to be able to welcome all our guests to St Anne's this evening. I hope by the time you've completed your evening here and had an opportunity to speak with students, with fellows, you'll have a sense that St Anne's is more than just a physical place. We see ourselves as a community that's serious about education and research, that has a shared aspiration to understand the world and change it for the better. Those are things that we take very seriously, but you may be relieved to hear that we don't take ourselves too seriously. Time studying here or working here shapes lives and changes lives. And I think Tom and his family know that very well, because their late brother Jim studied here, gained a huge amount from his time here. I gather not all of that was academic. Some of it was about lifelong friends, life experience. And Jim was a real friend and supporter of the college throughout his life, and we're still indebted for the work that he did as president of what was the Association of Alumni for St Anne's. So I know Tom understands what time at St Anne's can do for individuals. And I personally understand that as well. Jim was here in 1979 and one of the first brave and boundary-challenging cohort of male students at this college. So maybe one of the earlier iterations of diversity for St Anne's. I was here in the 1980s, and I too can say that this place changed my life and propelled me into the unlikely vocation of policing, where I served as a police officer for more than 30 years before coming back to St Anne's as its principal, which, as I say, is a real privilege and honour. St Anne's right now continues to change the lives of those who spend time here. I'm confident that through the course of this evening, over drinks, over dinner, you will enjoy speaking with our students, with their tutors, finding out a bit more about life here. They're all remarkable people. And importantly, they learn, not just from lectures, from tutorials, what's in books, but they also learn from the rich pool of people that make up college life. People from such a diversity of backgrounds, nationalities, academic disciplines, and personalities. Because actually that's what a college is about. It's people and the very different things they bring to it. St Anne's has a shared goal of wanting to be the home of choice for the brightest and most ambitious students. And we know that at the moment, we're missing out on some of the very best talent from some ethnic and social groups, geographic regions, and schools. And we all lose out because of that underrepresentation. The individuals who deserve to be studying here and aren't getting that opportunity, but also us as an educational institution, and also the wider world, because Oxbridge, rightly or wrongly, and its graduates still have a disproportionate influence on the wider world. And we want to make sure that the future leaders come from every background for the benefit of us all. So the leaflet that we've given to you, and maybe you've had a chance to look at some of the information in it, outlines some of the things that we're already doing to address this underrepresentation. However, I need to be absolutely clear that we know that we as a college and Oxford as a university need to do more. And I've got to say that we're delighted and honoured that Tom has agreed to work with us as a newly elected honorary fellow of the college in this journey that we're on the path of. We hope that as a result of tonight, many more of you who are guests this evening may be prepared to work with us to make sure that we end up where we want to be, with the brightest and best from any background here contributing to college life and gaining the life-changing opportunities that are available here. So, you haven't come here tonight to hear me speak. Clearly Tom is the man of the evening. I want to introduce to you, just before Tom speaks, Gergen Karana, who is our current JCR president. JCRs are one of those Oxford terms. Why should anyone know what it means? Gergen is the student-elected president of our equivalent of the College Student Union. And I'd ask him to introduce Tom to you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen, and thank you very much to everyone here tonight. It's an honour to be able to speak in front of a group of people who are far more qualified than I am to be speaking. Helen mentioned this talk to me, and being a millennial, the very first thing I did is Google Tom. And what I found was quite surprising. I almost had to search and check that this was just a single person and not multiple people. Tom's had quite a career, from working at Goldman Sachs to founding multiple startups, to now being a non-executive director at the BBC. It's an honour to be introducing him to you tonight. And amongst all of these things, he still found time to give back to the local community, from doing work, including being the chair of the African Gifted Foundation. It's an honour to welcome him to the podium, and it's an honour to welcome you all here tonight. Thank you, and enjoy your evening at St. Anne's.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming this evening. Thank you to the principal and the fellows for electing me as an advisory fellow to St. Anne's. I really, really am honoured. As was mentioned, my brother was here, Jim was here about 35 years ago. He was amongst the, in fact, he was part of the first cohort of men to join the college. He had a wonderful time here. And he always looked back with fond memories. So I'm going to say a few words, and thank you very much, Gogan, for your introduction. Very, very kind of you. I'm going to say a few words, and then we'll have a bit of a Q&A. I would say that I would encourage. I basically packed out the audience with friends, and so your job is to whoop and holler. You know, we're not doing this sort of Oxfordy. No. We need noise. So that's what we're going to have. So here we are at the heart of the British establishment. One thing I learned actually, in a sense, I feel like the preacher at the royal wedding. I have you here, you can't go. So I'm just going to keep talking. The other thing I learned from the royal wedding is whenever, as a black person, you go into the heart of the British establishment, it's best to bring a cellist with you. So I've brought a cellist, Ayanna Witter-Johnson, an amazing young lady who's going to help us along this journey. In fact, part of what made me think of this is my wife, who's here in the front row, who said, "Don't mention me in your speech." I said I'm going to do a talk. She said how long it's going to be for. I said about 45 minutes. She said, "Oh God, you're not going to drone on for 45 minutes." So we thought what we'll do is we'll break it up with with some musical interludes. So feel free to snooze through the talking bit and then make sure you cheer for Ayanna and her cello Rubin. Meet Rubin. That's the cello. The title of my talk is Diversity, A Journey of 1,000 Miles Begins with a Single Step. For me, that single step is an authentic conversation. I hear a lot of conversations about diversity, and I think it's really, really important that you have a really authentic conversation, a no-kidding conversation, and from that you can start to move forward and start to make progress. A lot of things are being done, a lot of things have been done, and that's brilliant, but I guess this is the start of my journey here at Oxford on this journey of diversity. So this is my first step, is starting this conversation. Nothing I say about diversity here is fundamentally correct. It's just my views. These are my views, you will have your views. They won't necessarily be the same views. We'll listen to each other's views, we'll explore them, we'll share them, we'll understand, we'll find ways forward. So that's the way I think about it. I should actually make another confession. I have an interest in this. I am, I don't know what the best way to put it is, but I'm black. And therefore what you'll find is that I tend to come at this question of diversity from a black and minority ethnic perspective. Diversity is equally about gender, about social mobility, social background, about disability, about sexuality, and they are all equally important. And actually, the points that I'll make, some of them will apply to those other aspects of diversity, some of them will be different, and it's really interesting to sort of hear all of them. And sometimes, if you get a single point of view, it can be so powerful that the others get drowned out, and it's really important that we make sure when we go on this diversity journey, we hear all of those views. And in some cases, there'll be trade-offs that we need to wrestle with. An approach that's right for one won't be right for another, and we need to sort of keep that in mind. My conversation is going to be in three parts. I'm going to talk about what I see as the core challenge when you think about diversity and you think about Oxford or Oxbridge, what I think may be one of the core challenges and what a few people have said to me is the thing to focus on. I'll then talk a bit about the choices. There are lots of choices to make. There are complex choices. There are trade-offs. And we'll talk a bit about the choices. And then possibly for me, most importantly, I want to talk a bit about change. We don't often talk about change in as much detail as I would like to see. So I'll end by talking about change and about how you might be able to drive change in these sorts of complex organizations. So the challenge. The heart of the challenge, I think, actually I asked someone, I said, what do you think the challenges are? And this was a young lady who'd spent time at Cambridge rather than here, but very similar context, lots of friends from a diverse background. And what she said was quite, I thought, insightful. She said, the question she thinks is, there's an orthodoxy about what it means to be, look, and sound smart. There's just something that we feel as if we know it when we recognize it. And therefore, if you deviate from that orthodoxy, you're not quite as smart. You're not necessarily as smart, and you have to work harder to prove that you are. And it's sort of centered around this idea that this is sort of what it means. And not only this is what it means, it's not where you are at that point, it's also the journey that you've gone on to get there. If we don't recognize the journey that you've gone on, if it's a different journey, you've arrived at the same place, but your journey was different, then that's going to throw us a bit. Is that smart? How could you have come from there and be smart? So the point was that there's something about, if you've got this sort of, this is what smart looks like, and all your processes and procedures are designed to find people that look like that, then people who come from different backgrounds, who are equally brilliant but in a somewhat different way, just may not be recognized at the same point at the same time. Therefore, what I see quite often is there's quite an industry, quite a lot of coaching and training goes on to take people from different backgrounds and try and make them look as closely as possible to this definition that we've got of this is what brilliant and smart looks like. And that sort of troubles me a bit. I think that is a direction. It sort of works, and sometimes it works, but often it doesn't work. But it sort of troubles me that there seems to be this kind of orthodoxy of this is smart, and if you're not like that, if you haven't come on that journey, if you've come through a different route, or you don't look and feel or sound like that in the right way, we're going to have to work a bit harder to figure out whether you're sort of one of us, as it were. I'm going to give you an example to explain what I mean, but before that, let me just give you some stats, just so that we're on the same page. And these will be stats that a lot of people are familiar with, and I don't sort of use them to kind of make us uncomfortable at all, but just to try and get at where the challenges might be, because I'm really sort of looking for where the challenges are here. So we know that there are a lot of stats actually on the Oxford website, and I think it's brilliant. I think if you go to the Oxford website and you look at the statistics, it is very, very transparent, and that is incredibly important. Anytime you get an organisation that is as transparent as it can be and is uncomfortable with that and maybe gets things thrown at it, that is an organisation that is really sort of opening up. So you look at the stats, about 12,583 undergraduates came to Oxford in 2017. Those are the stats that are out there. Of that, 17.9% were or are BAME, Black, Asian, minority ethnic, declared themselves to be. That's actually not a bad percentage. When I saw that, I thought, okay, that's really interesting. So what's the challenge then? Yes, it could be 20%, it could be 25%, but it's not 5% or 3%, it's 17.9%. So that's not bad at all. So where are the challenges? So you need to sort of look a little bit underneath that, and all the stats are there. You can look at them underneath, and you start to see where some of the challenges might be. So, for example, the acceptance rate for white students is, according to the website, is 23%. 1 in 4 applications will get offered a place. The acceptance rate for black and minority ethnic students is 15%, about 10 points lower. That's kind of interesting. Why is that happening? What's going on there? The acceptance rate for black British applicants is about 12%. So it's half the acceptance rate for white students. So that's interesting. That's something that we need to kind of look at and say, right, so we get this 17.9%, that looks okay, but what's going on there? What's happening that we're getting a much, much lower acceptance rate there? That's one area to look at. The other thing is sort of the raw numbers. And this is where sometimes in this sort of discussion about diversity, and in particular the discussion about race, people can sometimes feel a little bit nervous of sort of looking at the different groups and seeing how they're performing in different ways. It's sort of like, oh, that's a bit, are we allowed to explore that? But I don't care, I just do whatever. So, so Asians of Indian origin, 635 applied, 95 were accepted. Black British Caribbean origin, 55 applied, 7 were accepted. This is in the whole of Britain. That's kind of, when I looked at that, I sort of thought, that's a bit odd. Have I read the numbers correctly? This is in the whole of Britain. Only 55 black British students of Caribbean origin decided to apply to Oxford. Why? There are a hell of a lot more than 55 that could have applied. Why have only 55 applied? And then only 7 get in. That's sort of quite a surprising figure. Black British of African origin, 327 applied, 53 got in. And Black British Caribbean and Black British African lifestyles are almost interchangeable. You go to schools, very similar groups of lads all hanging out with each other. Why have 6 times as many Black British Africans applied to Oxford than Black British Caribbean? There's all sorts of interesting stuff in there that we sort of need to allow ourselves to kind of get into and explore and see what we might do and so forth. The questions that I sort of land with coming out of that are, why aren't a lot more applying? What is it that we've managed to do about the way Oxford and Cambridge feel that only 55 black British Caribbean young people decided to apply last year. That is just, why is that? And when they apply, why is the acceptance rate that much lower than when their white counterparts apply? What's going on there? So we need to kind of explore those things in order to understand the challenges, in order to get into what we're going to do about it. Sometimes, as I said, it can be the process. It can be, I think, something about the orthodoxy, the assumptions about what journey have you been on and what do you look like if you're smart that can get in the way and sometimes actually result in the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. And I'll give you an example, and what people do with examples and what I'll do with an example is you pick a corner case that's quite extreme in order to make the point. So I'm going to pick a corner case that's quite extreme in order to make the point. And I'm doing it transparently, so you know that's what I'm doing, but but it is quite useful just to see, oh, okay, sometimes the process can end up there instead of there. That's interesting, maybe we should have a look at the process. And Helen will be familiar with this example. As was mentioned, I run a school in Ghana called the Africa Science Academy. We take very bright girls from all across Africa. They come to us, they study A-levels in maths, further maths, physics. And they do the Cambridge International A-level syllabus, and that's what they do. Except for one thing, is that my girls do their A-levels in 12 months instead of 24 months, because they're clever. So they are very, very clever African girls from less privileged backgrounds. We look across the continent, we find them wherever we can find them, we bring them in, they do maths, further maths, physics, they get excellent grades, all of them passed last year, 79% of the grades were A star to B, they go off to universities. You can whoop at that point. If come on! Now, the interesting thing is the first year, there was a girl who came, a 15-year-old girl came from Nigeria. She was the youngest girl in the school, most of them 17, 18, some as old as 20, their education might have been disrupted. She was a 15-year-old, and right from the start, we could see that she was exceptional. She was really something special. She was voted head girl in the school, even though she was years younger than the others. At the end of her year at the school, she got A star, A star, A. She got the highest marks in maths and further maths, A-level, in the country. Not in the school, not in the territory, in an entire country. This 15-year-old girl got the highest marks. She would have got 3 A stars. She would have got an A star in physics as well, but our physics teacher at the time wasn't excellent at his practical side, so she dropped some marks there. But on the theory side, she was A star level. She was thinking what universities to apply to, where in the world she should apply to. People were saying to her, go to America, they'll throw scholarships at you. I said to her, someone of your caliber, there is only one university you need to go to, Oxford. That's where you need to go. Don't apply to anywhere else, apply here. That's what you need to do. They will see who you are, what you are. Don't worry about the fees, I will sort those out. This is what you should do. So this is what she did. Now, at this point, I'm supposed to be able to say, and here she is now. But she isn't. She didn't get an interview, which was a surprise. But it was understandable because there's a process, because the process looks for smart people who've been on a certain journey in a certain shape. And it starts with an exam that you have to do. You usually do the exam at the start of your upper six. And by then you've done lower six, then you do this exam, and then you're good enough, and then you get the interview. If she had been able to do the exam at the end of her year, she would have got an amazing mark, but she did the exam just about, she'd come off the plane for the first time, she'd come to the school, it was time for her to do her exam. Well, yeah, she just couldn't get to the level that was required, so she didn't get it. Now she's fine. Obviously what happened was I said, okay, go on then, and now she's in California on a full scholarship, being well looked after and so forth. So fine, but she should be here. And someone here should have seen her, and the process should have said, this is our person, this is one of our people. I bet if you took all the students here and said, stand up everyone who got A star, A star, A, and sit down if it took you more than a year, there wouldn't be many students standing. And she was a rounded individual as well. So sometimes a process that is designed and honed and worked on for years and years and years and absolutely works to find a certain shape of person that we know is a smart person can work in a way to end up with entirely the opposite result. And I think there's something in exploring what we think smart is, what we think brilliance is, that includes what we think brilliance is in terms of the journey, what we think brilliance is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, and so forth, that I think is really interesting. And I want to illustrate that point with a very practical example, because we all know what brilliant classical music sounds like. And I want to invite Ayanna to show us what brilliance looks and sounds like. Brilliance. It comes in all shapes, sizes, journeys. You have to be open to the possibilities. Let's talk about the choices. If we're going to take on these challenges, we need to make choices. We need to understand the context that we're making these choices in. So if you take again the Black, Asian, minority ethnic population, by some estimates, by 2025, which is just round the corner, something like 25% of the British population will be non-white. A lot of people don't realise that. Until you hear it, you don't realise that that is where the population is going. And obviously the younger population, and in the cities and so forth, is even more diverse than that. So if that's the world you live in, what sort of choices do you make as an institution if you want to be diverse? I think the key choice, the absolute key choice that you have to make is to make an authentic commitment that you are going to engage with this issue. I see so many organizations that make a commitment that say, diversity is really important to us, and they just say it. It just rolls off the tongue, and then you've done it. But making a commitment that is genuinely, it really is. It really is important to us. This is the way the world is going. We really have to do something about it. you can tell the difference. When you're dealing with an organisation, you can tell the difference between an organisation that has said, diversity is really important to us. Oh, look, a butterfly. You know, versus an organisation that is really committed to say, this is what we're going to do. One of the main reasons why I'm here and involved and going to do what I can to help is that St Anne's College has really made that commitment, so much so that it's written it into its mission statement for the next period. And the way colleges work is that it isn't just one person that says, hey, I'm going to write the mission statement and away we go. The fellows discuss it, they kick it around, they debate every word, they are independent people, they are leading figures in their field. One person can't say to them, this is how it's going to work. Much as one person might like to be able to say, but that's not how it works. You are going to talk through everything until you get to, these are actually the words. We understand what we mean by these words, and these are the words. And as a result of that, St Anne said, diversity and inclusion is part of what we're doing here, what we're here to do. That doesn't necessarily mean, and we know exactly what we're going to do, and we've got all the answers, and aren't we great? But there is a difference between an authentic commitment and making that choice versus just saying, yeah, wouldn't it be a great idea? And I think what we need to do as a diverse community is when we see an organisation make that sort of commitment, we need to get behind that organisation and help it and understand it and support its choices and try and help it on that journey. It's not good enough for us to say, well, you've made that commitment, yeah, but what are you doing about it? We've then got to get involved and take it on that journey as well. So I think that's really important. You can make some really positive choices, but the choices are complex and nuanced, and you have to kind of think them through. So, should a college engage much earlier? Is that what it should do? Should it, someone said to me, I was canvassing ideas from various people who've been to Oxford or Cambridge, and I was saying, what do you think it should do? And someone was saying, the colleges should get involved in schools at a much earlier stage. Should they? Should they get involved at 11? Should they get involved at 14? Is that the job of the school to do that? And the college is the college and it stays where it is, but the schools have got to bring these students along? Or should the college reach into these schools, reach as far back as it can and start to work with them? That's an interesting choice. It's not obvious. Someone can leap up and say they should be doing this. Someone else could say they should be doing that. Do we know? We need to explore that. I've heard talk of the idea of sort of an open source aptitude test that people could take a lot earlier, not just at that point when you're just about to come to a college or you're applying to a college. Is there a test that you could take much earlier that would sort of indicate to you as an individual that you're somebody who ought to go on that path? And that sort of test may be in some way validated or endorsed by Oxford and Cambridge. Would that be a good thing? Would that get people thinking, actually, I am that sort of person, maybe I should go on that journey? Or would that put them off? Would they, if they didn't pass it at that particular moment for whatever reason, would they then say, well, that door is closed to me, I'm going to go down a different path? Complex questions. Should colleges get involved in sort of pre-degree, post-A-level type of courses? When my brother Jim came here, after he finished his A-levels, he then did an extra year. He did an S-level, or he did S-levels. They used to have S-levels then. And that was just a natural thing. At his school, if you were one of the people that was looking at Oxford and Cambridge, then when all the other A-level students left, you stayed for another year, you did S-levels, you applied, you went on that journey. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't, oh my God, they're wasting a year of their lives, this, that, and the other. It's just what you did. Should colleges get involved in that sort of thing, either here or with the schools? It needs to be looked at. Targeted sponsorship. A lot of the sort of people who might be coming from less privileged backgrounds. The work is so intense here in those 8 weeks or 3 weeks or however long you seem to spend before you come home again for a holiday. I don't understand. But during that period, you don't have time to go off working and this, that, and the other. You just have to focus. So if you don't have the extra £500, the extra £1,000 a year, the extra money to go here, there, and everywhere, it really makes a difference. So should there be targeted scholarships aimed at different groups in order to encourage those groups to come in? I think there should be, but it's something that people debate. But I think that would be a really strong thing to pull people in if that's what you wanted to do. Should colleges compete a lot harder than they do at the moment? Colleges, they do outreach. That's good. They go out and they talk to people. But I'll tell you a difference. I talked about my student that didn't come here. Right now, 8 of my students from the Africa Science Academy are studying engineering, computer science at Edinburgh University. Edinburgh University decided that it was going to go hunting for students. They came to the college, they talked to the students, they said apply, apply, apply. They didn't accept all the ones that applied. There was nothing at all like, you apply and we'll change our standards and you can come in. No. You had to get the same levels. If it's A star, AA, it doesn't matter whether you're doing it in a year or 2 years, or if you're in Africa and less privileged, or you're at St. Paul's, you have to get A star, AA. There was no compromise between quality and diversity. You often hear that. People will say, well, if we want to increase diversity, we're going to have to accept that quality goes down. Do we really want to do that? I don't accept that. I just don't accept it. So, you can decide, a college could decide it is going to look for students much more actively. A few weeks ago, I was asked to speak at Imperial College, African Caribbean Society at Imperial College. The room was full. There were maybe 50 or so young black people studying, all sorts of subjects, a lot of science subjects. They would have got grades that would have got them here as well. Why aren't they here? Did we go after them? Why didn't they apply? We need to figure out why they're not applying, and do we really go after them and try and bring them in? Because the talent is out there. There is enough talent out there. There genuinely isn't a shortage of the sort of applicants that we're looking for. And the college itself, do you choose to be more inclusive, really more inclusive? So the number of black and black mixed students that came to Oxford last year, 69. That's a fair-sized group, but then there are 38 colleges, which means that on average, you're 1 or 2 black students coming to your college. That is that can be a challenging thing. You walk in, there's hundreds of people in this college, you're the new person, there's just 1 or 2 of you. You can pretend, well, it shouldn't matter and this, that, and the other. I spend a lot of my career going into rooms where I'm the only black person in the room. I'm not the only black person in this room. But it's often the case that you are that person. And it doesn't matter how much you've been doing it. You notice it. Now, as you get bigger and stronger, you don't care so much and you're used to it and so forth. Early on in your career, it's quite daunting. When I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, when I worked at Goldman Sachs, I'd walk into the room, there would be 500 people, and I would be the only black person in the room. You can't tell me, however strong I was at the time, it's sort of like, okay, here we go again. Same if you're the only woman going into a room, you just have to steel yourself. And here you are, an 18-year-old young man, young woman, coming up to Oxford for the first time. You've been living in an environment where a lot of your friends are black, white, mixed, etc. And now here you are, boom, you are one of the only 2 black people arriving. How inclusive is that? And therefore, how hard does the college need to work to make it feel inclusive for you? And you need to look at the college hierarchy as well, the people, the grown-ups, the people running the college, the people leading the college. My daughter was at Cambridge for 3 years. I asked her, what was it like there? She said, well, to be honest, I think over the 3 years, I didn't really see or engage with any black tutors, supervisors, lecturers, professors, fellows, masters. I didn't see any. There were, at my college and the subject I was doing, there weren't any. Over 3 years. That's kind of, that's interesting. So, how much do we need to do if we want to make these places inclusive? What do we need to do on that score? That's really interesting. sometimes if you take positive choices and you take bold positive choices, you can achieve disproportionately positive outcomes. You see this in other industries. So when Marvel decided that it was going to make a film, and it was going to make the film Black Panther, and it decided it was going to make the positive choice of just full-on, completely embracing the diversity that goes along with making a film like that. Just no compromise, that's what it was going to do. It has reaped huge benefits from that. 1.3 billion plus in take-ins and continuing to rise, making it one of the biggest grossing films of all times. There's talk of a sequel in the works. There's talk of spin-offs. They've created a franchise. They will generate billions out of that decision. They've changed careers. They've launched careers that will go on to do other things. They've become a magnet. They are now a magnet. If you've got an idea for a film, you're going to take it to Marvel because they've made that one choice. It doesn't matter if they don't make a whole load of other choices. Just by making that one choice, they become a magnet for ideas, for people, for talent. So sometimes, if you make a choice, a positive choice around diversity, it can pay off in a huge way. But the first choice that you need to make is that absolute, authentic commitment that you are going to do something about it. Even if you don't know exactly what you're going to do, just make that commitment, and then we as a community need to get behind that commitment and help to make it happen. I sometimes wonder what it would be like if a college decided that it was going to make that sort of bold choice. It was going to make that really bold choice. The sort of, what would it look like if a college said, here's a Black Panther level of commitment to make something happen? What would be the rewards that college would make? It would be fascinating to see. Ayanna, can you tell the guests about Black Panther?
You made a journey across the sea. You made a journey across the sea, looking for numbers, but you found me. When you first saw me, how did you feel? Not quite the picture of what you dreamed, like a Black Panther, I'm free to roam without a keeper. You never need to fear my power. My strength will always be your anchor. Laid the red carpet, I gave you my home, made you feel welcome, never alone. Your eyes were greener, your tongue was sharp, and so I surrendered, and I hid in the dark. You refuse to see me for who I am, so you can justify the reasons for your plans. And now you're running because the answers are on your doorstep, and you can feel the pressure, time is closing in. Like a Black Panther, I'm free to roam without a keeper. You never need to fear my power. Oh, my strength will always be your anchor.
Why do I get the feeling I'm being overshadowed? So, making choices is the easy part. It's complex, but it's easy. Making change is really hard. And what we need to think about is what really drives change, because different things drive change in different organizations. And we get a lot of the word should in this world. People say, we've told you what to do, you should do it. Your organization, you should do this, you should do that. You know what needs to be done, it should happen, why isn't it happening? To me, someone who works in change, who tries to make change happen, should really isn't very useful to me. I look at organizations, I try as much as I can to understand the organization and try and think, what are the levers in that particular organization? What are the levers you need to get hold of in order to make change happen? What are the things that motivate change, that inspire change, that drive change in that particular organization? And it's complex, it's difficult. People talk about, in change, the world of change, people talk about a burning platform. There needs to be a burning platform. Actually, I was looking the other day at where the phrase burning platform comes from. And as many of you will know, it comes from the 1988 Piper Alpha disaster in the North Sea. There was actually an oil rig platform, there was an explosion, and many people died. A few survived. The ones that survived leapt off the platform into the North Sea. They let 15 stories down, and the sea itself was on fire because the oil had come up. So the sea was on fire, there was debris everywhere, but these people, they leapt off the platform into the sea, and that's how those that survived. One of them was asked, why did you do that? How could you do that, leap off the platform? And he said, it was either jump or fry. That's literally what he said. It was either jump or fry. When people talk about an organization having a burning platform, they are talking about a level of intensity that compels the organization to change no matter what. It may not want to change, but the platform is, the burning platform is such that it just has to change. And so the question is, do we have that burning platform in this issue, diversity at Oxford and Cambridge? And I say, no, there isn't a burning platform. And therefore, if you try and adopt a change approach that assumes that there's a burning platform, I just don't think it will work. See, what you have to remember is that this institution is literally 1,000 years old. It is 1,000 years old. That is how old this institution is. This is an institution that has survived, however many scholars leave in Oxford to go and set up a new university up the road called Cambridge. It has survived the Black Death sweeping through Oxford, wiping people out left, right, and centre. It has survived the dissolution of the monasteries. It has survived 2 world wars. This is not an organisation, this is not an institution that is going to just suddenly change fundamentally because there's someone over here saying it's a burning platform, you've got to do it. If it's going to change, it's going to change from within. It is going to decide it wants to change, it needs to change, and then it's going to make that change happen. And if your theory of change is that we can make it change by trying to create a burning platform over here, then unless it's going to be worse than the Black Death, it just isn't going to work. Because the structure is fascinating. This is an institution with 38 colleges, some of them 1,000 years old, some of them 100 years old, extremely wealthy. Each of the colleges has 50, 60 fellows. Each of those fellows is absolutely brilliant, world-class in their field. You can't tell any of them to do anything they don't want to do, and this is the organization is designed to not be controlled by any central body. There is, I worked for an organization, I worked for an investment bank years ago, and it had some problems with race, and it ended up in a race tribunal, and I was in that tribunal and presenting things, and other people were presenting things and so forth. After it got through that, the senior partners in that organization just said, that's not going to happen again. We're going to change. And the guys at the top said, right, it's changing. And then they sent the message out. And throughout the organization, it just changed because the guys at the top had said so. So that's what it did. That was the shape of that organization. And that's how it worked. This organization, this institution, it just doesn't work like that. That's not how it's going to work. It's fascinating. As a computer scientist, it's the closest thing I've seen to sort of a manifestation of the internet itself. When the internet was designed, it was designed to be distributed. There is no single point of failure. You can't force the internet to change this way and that. It's distributed. This organization is a network. It's a very powerful network. You have to understand the dynamics of it, but there is no point, no individual point that you can say, well, if that changes, everything will change. I was trying to scratch my head to say, what other organizations are there that are sort of the same shape, have the same characteristics, and therefore maybe we can learn something from the way they've changed. And I should say, in this world of diversity and inclusion, there is way too little conversation about what drives change in organizations. There is a huge amount of conversation about the problems, and then people stop there. And then there's quite a lot of conversation about what you should do. You should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And then there's just a trivial amount of conversation about what will actually make change happen in this type of organization, that type of organization. I would love to see a lot more work in that area. I think it would help us a huge amount, because I think that's where the problem is, that figuring out theories of change, practice of change. Organizations that are similar, well, Cambridge is identical and therefore has the same problems. Someone said to me the United Nations is quite similar. A huge prestigious organization made up of all these parts, bits of power everywhere. Yes, there's a Secretary General, but let's get a Secretary General along and see whether the Secretary General says, oh yeah, I told them all to change and they changed. The UN doesn't work like that. So have they been able to change in any way? And if so, what can we learn from that? The organisation that is most similar that I have direct experience of are the city livery companies. I've been a member of one of the city livery companies for more than 20 years now. For those that don't know, the city livery companies, they're the guilds, the goldsmiths, the silversmiths, this, that, and the other. They also go back about 1,000 years. They also have the old livery companies that are literally hundreds and hundreds of years old, and what are called the modern companies, i.e. those that were formed sort of after the 1600s kind of thing. They also, all of them will have a master, all of them will have, they have dinners, they have their own languages, they have livery people that come together. You want to get anything done, you can't just tell the livery to do this, you have to sort of work the system and so forth. So, what, if any, lessons can we draw from that world that I've been involved in for the last 20 years that may or may not be of interest in this world? I don't know whether they are, but the things I've learned trying to affect change and make things happen in that sort of network, sometimes it's pairing. A young livery company will team up with one of the ancient livery companies, and the two of them together. You'll get a livery company that's young and agile and wants to cause change to happen. It will get together with one of the ancient companies that has huge authority and reputation, and the two of them together will help make things happen. So maybe here, should colleges be trying to do things on their own? Should they form pairs and partnerships or small groupings and try and do things together? In the livery world, you'll quite often see pairs partnering, small groupings that try and do things and make change happen. That's how things work over there. Sometimes you'll get a company that will push forward and will make change happen in a particular area, and then will feel fairly free to talk about it. And they become a bit of an icon, and then what the Lord Mayor will do is we'll sort of point at that company and say, we really like what they're doing. And so the Lord Mayor can't say to the other companies, do this, do this, do this, but it might say to that company, it'll celebrate that company, and then other companies will say, oh, hold on, yeah, we want some of that, so they'll start to pitch in as well. So sort of soft power across the network can work. If you're a livery company, you have to focus on changing what you can change rather than trying to change the whole system. It doesn't make a lot of sense to say, right, we want the whole livery movement to change like this. So you think about what you can do, what's within your power as a livery company, and you do those things. And so in this context, you would really focus on what is within our power to do, and you would focus on those things, and you'd worry later about how the whole of Oxford, how the whole of Cambridge or whatever might change. You'd say, right, what can we do with our college? You know, and you'd focus on particular things. For example, every year there'll be a story from Oxford or Cambridge from a college where a minority person was stopped by a porter. Every year, you can guarantee, is just standard. You might as well just get it over with right at the start of the year. You know? when the new students come in, just get a porter to stop someone, and then but what that makes you realise is that the porters are on the front line of this. You know, were the porters in the conversation when you decided that diversity and inclusion was important? Were the porters in that conversation? Are they celebrating it? They need to be, because they are on the front line. They you know, you can make a college incredibly welcome, or you can make it really quite forbidding, and they will do that. And so, are they in the room? Are they in the conversation? Are they looking forward to it? Are they saying to themselves, you know what? Our college is going to be the most welcoming. There'll be something about, you know, the way we do it, the things we get involved in. We're going to know people's names. We're going to do this. You could decide to do that. That would be a choice. Or you could look at the fellows. Why would, you know, it is completely, as I understand it, in any college's right to decide who it appoints as an honorary fellow or doesn't appoint or whatever. You could say, right, by 2020, every Oxford college will have at least 2 Black or Asian honorary fellows. It could just do that. You know, it doesn't need anyone else to do it. The colleges could just say, that's what we're going to do, and then they would look for eminent black people, and they would ask them whether they'd be willing to serve as advisory fellows. It wouldn't have to look far because they're all here. so that's easy. We could pretty much do that this evening. But you know, if you had you know, Oxford and every college had 2 or 3 fellows from different backgrounds and so forth, and therefore across the university, all of a sudden there were 50, 60, 80 new diverse fellows from all sorts of backgrounds, the conversation would change. The approach, the way Oxford would be seen would change. It couldn't not change. So there are things that are within colleges' powers to do that they could just decide, we're going to do these things if that's what they wanted to do. Organisations that are 1,000 years old don't change overnight. They don't change easily, they don't change overnight, but eventually they do change. And this is one of the good things about having a black heritage, because you're very conscious of change, journeys of change. You're very conscious that there are things that we looked at and thought, that will never change. And just through years and patience, eventually it does change. You know, that's part of our black heritage, black knowledge, that things change over time, whether it's apartheid, whether it's Jim Crow laws, whether it's first black president, etc., etc. Over time, things change. Real change takes time. Patience is important. Everyone wants things to happen now. But real change in 1,000-year-old organizations takes time. Someone once said, it's a long time coming, but I know a change is going to come. Ayanna, can we tell them about change?
river in a little tent. Oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's out there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Yeah, yes you will. Said I go to the movies when I go downtown. Somebody keeps telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was my first step of 1,000 miles on this journey. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you.